This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Guys, I have been using NordVPN for the past few years. Why? Because NordVPN allows me to browse the internet without being traced. All my data is encrypted and my IP address is hidden. Since I travel a lot, NordVPN protects my data when I'm on public Wi-Fi, which is 90% of the time. It even allows me to watch Netflix overseas without restrictions. If you don't know what a VPN does, let me tell you how it works. When you connect to the internet through your ISP, they can see and log everything you do online. They may even hand over your browsing history to an advertiser, to a government agency, or what I fear the most, to a third party. NordVPN uses military-grade encryption to hide your location, hide your IP address, and it encrypts all the data you send or receive. No one will ever know your browsing history. They'll never be able to share your personal information with anyone. Everyone should be using NordVPN. If you have a smartphone, you should have NordVPN. Go get it right now. To get 70% off and 1 month for free, just use the promo code SUNNIN at nordvpn.org. All right, guys, let's do some fan questions.
Hey, Chill, Dustin Bills, Just Bleed MMA. I wanted to see what your opinion was on this BMF title. Now, I know this is going to be a good marketing ploy for the UFC, getting Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal in the octagon together. But I feel like the bigger picture here is this belt, regardless who wins it, is going to be bait to bring Conor out of the woodwork. Do you think the BMF title is simply a belt that they're using as a lure to bring Conor out of his hiatus? Let me know.
No. No, I most definitely don't. But I also don't disagree with your point. That could be a byproduct. Look, I think the belt was a pretty simple idea. Nate Diaz said something about BMF and George Masvidal qualifies for BMF, and all of a sudden you got this huge mega fight. All of a sudden, right, you've got the added moving part that you couldn't get the Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington fight done. Now, all of a sudden, a non-title fight, even though it's a huge fight, is headlining the bill at MSG. I mean, there's just a lot of moving parts. And you brought up the word marketing. From that standpoint, there is something special about having a belt. I think we can all agree to that. So they come up with this title. And even Dana's, maybe it's a little bit silly. It's definitely a one-time deal. But boy, it has caught on. It caught on to the point that The Rock starts talking about it publicly, has now changed his schedule, is going out to the fight, and he's going to put it around the winner's waist. I mean, by example, I know many people got real excited about the BMF thing right when it first happened. And then some other people go, well, this is silly. And what do you mean it's a one-time title? You can't have a title that doesn't have a lineage to it, that doesn't get passed along. That's not how titles in combat work. Then you had other people come in, no, wait a second, this worked. Again, to use your word, marketing, it worked. I also think, I mean, from a competitive standpoint, I'm jealous to the highest of levels. Imagine you were a competitor, Diaz, Masvidal. You're going to get a title that's officially recognized by the organization. Oh, and you get the added benefit that there's no lineage, meaning you can never lose it. You will be in history for absolute ever. Forever. It will never be contested again. There's something very special about that. Now, to your point, is that going to draw out somebody like Conor McGregor? Well, in some ways, it has. I mean, he spoke up about it. He even called it the interim BMF title, which was a great line by Conor, but it's added to the dialogue. It's moving things forward. And to your word, from a marketing perspective, man, this was a home run.
What's going on, Chill? My name's Aaron. I've been in and out of martial arts all my life, but I got a question. As far as wrestlers go, we have some really great wrestlers right now. You got, of course, Jordan Burroughs, Kyle Dake, David Taylor, Kyle Snyder, Jaden Cox, all those guys. Who do you think would do the best in MMA, and do you know if any of them have like serious thoughts about transitioning over to MMA? Let me know.
Well, who would do the best? That's a really hard one to say, right? Because some of it's a mentality thing. Skill-wise and that transfer, yeah, they all have good skills. But the time when all you needed was really good skills in wrestling to do well in MMA, that was 1997, 1999, and that left. Now, what all of those guys would bring to the table, where I think that those are great names to bring forward to think that they could transition into another sport, is the work ethic, the goal setting, the dedication, the weight management, being able to compete, to walk in front of people, to understand all of these things. Those things will carry over far more than an underhook or a front headlock or an inside trip will. With that said, it would also come down to a big learning curve, right? It's a whole nother sport. You got to go learn multiple sports within the sport of MMA. Call it jujitsu, call it kickboxing, call it Western boxing. All of these things to also go along with your wrestling. The setups are different, the posture of straight up and down. It's something that you can learn very quickly compared to somebody that doesn't have that kind of a background. But that's where it stops. You don't get to just walk in because you were one of the world's best wrestlers and all of a sudden have a seat at the table in some of the larger MMA organizations. But you sure have a nice start. So the reason I offer you that as a background is it would come down to who wants to do it. Who's hungry? Who would be excited? Who wants to go in the room, in different rooms, in different gyms? Who's willing to be a big shark in a little sea and go to being a little fish in a big sea and start over? So whatever room they walk in, whether it's a jiu-jitsu room, the kickboxing, the box room, it's not going to be great the first few days. It's just not going to be great the first few weeks. It's not going to be great the first few months. They've dealt with that in their past. They made it to the top of one field. If I was to just to look at somebody of those names that you gave, of course, I would have to assume Jordan Burroughs because of the level of athlete that he is. Aside from the talented wrestler, he is a level of athlete that seems as though he could have gone into about 5 different sports had he done it in his 9 and 10 and 11 years old and made it to the highest of organizations, right? So of those names, I would like him, but there's one name that you left out, and that's Bo Nickel. I like Bo Nickel in that list only because of his youth and the fact that he's shown an interest, at least verbally, in MMA. And one name also that you'll need to remember is Pat Downey. Pat Downey just has the mindset. He just has that drive. It's what he wants to do. It is what he was planning to do. It's what he sees his future as. It's not a maybe will he go try. He for sure will try. And when you couple that with his work ethic, with his drive, with his condition, I think that that's a name that you can count on hearing for many years to come.
Hey, Chill. My question is, do you think that all the delays of the Khabib and Tony fight have actually helped Khabib in the fact that Khabib is looking better than ever and Tony gets dropped in every single fight? Do you think that actually Khabib will have a greater advantage now that the fight has been delayed that many times? Because maybe in another universe, Tony would have fought him at an earlier stage and completely dominated him because Khabib would still be, not as experienced with grinding out opponents and so on. Let me know.
Well, that's very fair, and that dialogue and conversation is going to always be out there. Anytime two greats fight, and Tony and Khabib are two greats, when the fight is over, if it didn't go the way that Tony's fans wanted it to, then they come out with a reworking of history and the dialogue that, well, yeah, but it was done too late and Tony wasn't ready. If it would have just been done 3 years ago, like it was scheduled to be done, right? You're always going to hear that. The same would go the other way for Khabib. Tony gets to jump on him. Well, yeah, but if this fight would have been done when Khabib was on top of the world, he could have beat anybody, including Tony, but he lost interest. He moved on. His heart wasn't in it. That's always the thing. And I don't really know where that excuse making comes from. And I don't really know what that excuse making, even if we had evidence to believe it was true, matters. It's not how the game is played. The game is played very specifically. How is this guy going to do against this guy on this specific night in this specific location? And I've talked to you guys about this many times, as it has to do with somebody pulling out of fights. You guys that pull out of fight, for any reason, you should lose your ranking. It should count as a loss. There is a forfeiture clause in every single sport out there except this one. It should be more relevant in this one than any other sport. We have had guys that are ranked number 1 in the world who can't leave the locker room by their own admittance. They will tell, I can't do it. My knee, my shoulder, my this, my mind, I'm sick. They'll tell you, oh, fine. Don't leave the locker room. I have no problem with it, but this is about who is the toughest right now. And if you're telling me I can't even walk out there and try, I will believe you. I will take you at your word. I will not tease you. I will not pressure you. I will accept what you're saying. But when I go back and do the rankings, I cannot say you're the baddest dude in the world when you're telling me I can't even try.
Hey, Chael, quick question for you. I was just wondering who you consider the greatest striker in UFC history to be. Do you think it's Anderson Silva, or maybe Connor, or do you maybe think it's Jose Aldo? Anyway, just want to know what you thought about it. Thanks, bad guy.
All really good options. I would have to go with Adesanya, and a lot of that is just based on resume and paper and what he did outside of it. I think that Robert Whittaker would qualify as one of the greatest strikers, even in light of the loss to Adesanya. I still think Robert Whittaker is definitely in that conversation of the best guys, and the fact that he was outstruck by Adesanya really should speak volumes. It really should. I think it does, but I think that it should. I love your mention of Connor, though, right? And I can turn to Adesanya, because I can say, well, he had 29 professional kickboxing bouts, striking only, and he won all but 2 of them. Oh, by the way, every fight that he's won in the UFC, including world championships, he's done with striking. I could bring that up, and that would be very fair of me. But it does come back to the old question of just how good is Conor McGregor? We don't actually know. Use Conor McGregor. You brought up striking, so let's just use striking. Let's throw the MMA out of it. All the great things he did in MMA with his hands and his feet. Let's throw it out and just look at boxing. When you look at the fact that he went in there with Floyd Mayweather, who is the greatest to have ever done it, more world championships than I can remember, and you guys know how good I am at remembering how many world championships a guy had. I forgot. Over more weight classes, amateur championships, Olympic berths, medals, anything that you could do perfectly undefeated. And the fact that he went 30 minutes with him, won a whole bunch of rounds regardless of that crooked, dirty, filthy commission that said he did not, won a whole bunch of rounds against Floyd, a whole bunch of series, a whole bunch of moments, but he doesn't have the resume. I could not turn like I can to Adesanya and say he had a decade-long career and he had 30 fights and they were all professional and here was his record. I just can't. But it does make me wonder, how good would have Conor done right now? The night he fought Floyd, how good could have he done? Could have he beat top 10 fighters that night? Could have he gone, take it out of the pros and throw it into the amateurs? 3-round atmosphere. No chance where Conor's going to get fatigued because he's in a new sport or has any kind of pressures or anxieties. No chance he's going to get tired in 9 minutes. Could he beat all the amateurs? Could he just beat all of the amateurs within Ireland, which would thus make him the Olympic representative for that country? Okay, let's say it does. Let's say he was good enough to make an Olympic team with absolutely no practice. Could he get a medal? Could he beat the Brit? Could he beat the Cuban? Could he beat the American? Could he beat the Russian in amateurs, 3-round atmosphere in Olympic competition? It does make you wonder just how good he is. I don't think that he would win one of these fictional arguments when we can't turn to a specific resume like you could with Adesanya. But I think for the sake of what you and I are doing right now, which is just having a mythical discussion, I think that it's fair to bring it up.
Hey, Chael, during the lead up to UFC Tampa, we saw Joanna Jędrzejczyk engage in a little bit of mental warfare with Michelle Waterson in Weightgate. Dana White even said that she was playing mind games. My question for you is, what are some tactics that you have either implemented or seen that are similar or different? Thank you so much.
Ha! Is that what happened? Is that what oh my God. That's kind of obvious now that you just said it. That never even crossed my mind. I took her at face value. I thought she just couldn't make the weight and was changing it. Is that what she did? She came out and just played a spoof? So I'll tell you, I had to travel. So back up. Go to Wednesday of fight week. That's when I hear the news that Joanna can't make weight. And they're even looking for a different opponent. Now they don't know if they have to call the main event off. They don't know if they have to change the rounds. I lose track. I'm on an airplane. I'm trying to do whatever. My week got a little bit busy. I destroyed my truck. If you heard that story, I had a weird week. Point being, I never got the update that she came through and made the 115-pound weight class. I assumed she did not. And I assumed they held the fight anyway. And I assumed they kept it at 5 rounds. And I assumed there was no consideration given to Michelle. I didn't find out until I made a video on this, put it on YouTube, and had people get a hold of me and go, hey, Chael, You're $1 short and a day late on this one. She made the weight. She made the weight. She said she wasn't going to make the weight. But you say it was a mind game. That's very interesting. I hadn't considered that. I don't think that would be an effective mind game, but that's kind of what mind games are. You never know what's going to work. Take a little shot at a guy, and then all of a sudden you see him start to unravel. Okay, great. Then you stay on that. I mean, it's playground rules when it comes to that. Throw something out, doesn't bother the kid. Okay, you don't ever bring it up again. You say something, it does bother the kid. You say it again and again and again and keep trying to bother him. I don't know that I ever had that affect me as much as, maybe I would hear it and appreciate it, or maybe I'd worry and think it was true. Oh no, is the fight going to be off? Anderson Silva, though, who had a very specific recipe for every single fight. Every single fight was the exact same recipe that he did to build and sell a fight. And it worked just fine for him. And all that was to be the champion. Very first statement is, I'll fight absolutely anybody they want. Once they finally wanted to fight somebody, he would absolutely refuse the fight. No chance will I fight. And then he'd lay out whatever the reason, they don't deserve it or they haven't earned it or whatever the reason, but the answer was no. He would keep that media going until it died off. Once that media died off, he'd say, yeah, sure, I'll do that fight. Nothing would change. Nobody would have to renegotiate or bring anything to the table. He just waited till the media died down. Then he said, okay, I will do the fight. Well, boom, that built big media. People wanted to see Anderson fight. They wanted to know who his next opponent is. He was a big, huge name that could get big, huge headlines. So then he would run with that. And the fight would build up and they do all of the training until those headlines died off. When things cooled off, every single fight, he would put out an injury report. Anderson Silva has a hurt rib. Anderson Silva's hand is hurt. The fight is in jeopardy. He wouldn't speak up. He wouldn't confirm it or deny it until that media cycle ran its course, which would generally get him about 72 hours, which is a long time for a speculation, which is a very powerful thing to live. Once it started to die down and it wasn't in the headlines anymore, then he would come out with a statement of, no, none of that's true. I'm completely fine. The fight's back on, which would get him another 2 or 3 or 4 days that the fight was on. This was the recipe that he would do. And I do remember one time when he put it out, or he's hurt, and Anderson wouldn't speak up, confirm or deny. And I do remember, oh no, is this fight not going to happen? I've worked so hard. I'm so ready for this. I want this so bad. My weight's under control. I mean, there was a lot of moving parts back then. And I remember even getting to practice one day, and Coach Clayton, he took me outside. We went for a long walk, like a mile long. We didn't break a sweat, nice and eat. We just went for a walk and talked. Because he was concerned that I was concerned that it was going to affect me. And the whole walk and talk had to do with it. We focused on ourselves. We got a date. We got a weight class, whoever the opponent is. Before we walk in this gym, before we get started, I need to know that you're not losing focus because of that. You're not panicked about this. Your job is the same. So I guess in some ways, yeah, he got me.
Uncle Jail, there's no bad guy like Uncle Jail. Never lost, not even around. Undefeated, undisputed, oh yeah.